Hi, and welcome to Journey into Prayer and Day 5. Today we're going to be looking at one of the Psalms. If you want to have a look at this and read it in your own language, then please feel free to stop this video and do that right now. So the Psalms is in the first chunk of the Bible, the first half of the Bible, and we want Psalm 32. Well, if we'd like to find the document I sent you, I'm just pulling it up here on my screen, and let's now read it together in English. And we'll do it in little bits at a time, and we'll talk about it as we go. So the first verse starts off with, "Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered." So this is written by David, King David, and he's talking about those times when we know we've done something wrong and we're feeling guilty. And he's saying, look, when you go to God with that and you say, God, I'm sorry for the things I've done wrong, when God forgives us, then we are blessed. That's a good thing. In verse 2, he says, "Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit there is no deceit." No deceit. Deceit means to cover something up. So he's saying, look, if you don't cover things up, but admit where you've gone wrong to God and ask for his forgiveness, then he forgives us, and that makes us blessed. And in verses 3 and 4, he talks about how he felt before he asked for forgiveness, how he felt when he was guilty, how he felt inside. He says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long." Now, he doesn't mean that his bones literally started to dissolve or disappear. He's saying that's how it felt. He felt as though he was unwell inside when he felt guilty. In verse 4 it says, "For day and night," in other words, he couldn't sleep. Whether he was awake during the day, whether he was trying to sleep at night, he couldn't because he felt guilty. Day and night, your hand, God, your hand was heavy upon me. It felt like God was making me feel guilty. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. I remember one year in December, actually it was Boxing Day, and it was so hot, it was 45 degrees, and our air conditioning wasn't working very well, and it was so humid, and it felt as though we were exhausted just trying to stay cool, and it felt like all of our energy was taken away, sapped. Is what that means, that when we feel sapped, it's like your energy is all taken away. And David's saying, hey, that's how I felt when I felt really guilty. I just felt like I didn't want to do anything. All my energy was gone. And then verse 5, "Then I acknowledged my sin to you." In other words, then I finally came to a place where I said, God, I'm sorry for what I've done wrong. And I didn't try to cover it up. I did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. I will say I'm sorry to God. I will tell him what I've done. And you, God, forgave the guilt of my sin. Verse 6, he says, "Therefore, let all the faithful pray to you while you may be found." He's saying, this is good. He's saying, let everybody experience this. I've experienced God forgiving me. It feels good. I want everybody to experience this. Let all the faithful pray to you while you may be found. Surely the rising of the mighty waters will not reach them. You are my hiding place. David's saying that God is my safe place. I know that if I've done wrong, he doesn't want to punish me. He wants to forgive me, but he wants me to come and talk to him about it and say, I'm sorry. He's my hiding place. He's my safe place. You will protect me from trouble, he says. You will surround me with songs of deliverance. And then when David gets to verse 8, he's so excited really that he's experienced God's forgiveness that he wants to start teaching other people about this. So he says, I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye upon you. Do not be like the horse or the mule, which have no understanding, but must be controlled by a bit and bridle, or they will not come to you. Now, what's this about? I don't know much about horse riding, but apparently the bridle is the bit that goes over the horse's head, and the bit is a bit of metal that goes in a horse's mouth. And if you're riding a horse and you pull the reins, those sort of cords that you hang on to, when you pull one way, then that forces that metal bit in the horse's mouth. It pulls on the horse's mouth and forces the horse to go that way. If you pull in this direction, and again that pulls on that bit and forces the horse to go in that direction. And what David is saying here is that God doesn't want to control us. He doesn't want to force us to do things like we control a horse or force the horse to go left or right. God wants us to do the right thing from our own hearts. He wants us to choose to do the right thing. God doesn't want to force that on us like you do with a horse with a bit and bridle. Verse 10 says, many are the woes of the wicked, but the Lord's unfailing love surrounds the one who trusts in him. Rejoice in the Lord and be glad, you righteous. Sing, all of you who are upright in heart. And then if you look at the next page of the document, next to the picture, there's a few notes on this, which we'll just read now together. So it says, we all know what it is like to feel guilty. David, who wrote this, lets us in on a personal moment of shame in Psalm 32. This psalm is very honest. Although we don't know the details of the deeds that led to David's feelings of guilt, he is clear that he has done something wrong, and he is willing to take personal responsibility. He's owning up to what he's done as he prays. In fact, next paragraph, later in verses 8 and 9, he tells you and me, the reader, to follow his example. We read this, didn't we? Do not be like that horse or mule who are not moved by conscience, but must be compelled by outward forces of discipline, like a bit or a bridle. That's a slightly different translation to the one we read. Saying a little bit more. In other words, don't wait for things to catch up on you. Listen to the feelings of guilt and deal with our sin. Go to God and say sorry. Confess to the Lord. You see, guilt is a powerful emotion, and David describes it, doesn't he, in both physical and emotional suffering. And they're those verses that we read before, when I kept silent. And underneath, David feels very bad about what he has done, but then he prayed, he admitted his faults to God, he stopped trying to hide them, and he experienced the relief of forgiveness in verse 5, and there, verse 5 is there again. So just reading that last paragraph now, the psalm starts with, blessed is he whose transgressions are covered, in verse 1. This tells us God would rather bless us than hurt us. He would rather forgive us than punish us. David realizes this and calls out, therefore let all the faithful pray to you while you may be found. He even ends the psalm with rejoicing and singing. The forgiven can once again enjoy a glad heart. So let me suggest this is a good psalm to read, like some of the other ones we've read together, in your own time, maybe as you set aside a little bit of time each day to read the Bible and pray to God. So here's some suggestions, numbers 1 and 2. First of all, Read the psalm slowly. Just read it through. Allow the words to speak to your heart. And then 2, go through it again, but this time use it as a way of praying to God. Pray some of these words to God. Maybe there are things as you read it that you realize you want to say thank you for some things. Well, say thank you to God for those things that come to mind. Or maybe there are things that you want to ask God to help you with. So pray for specific needs that come to mind. And if God shows you anything that you know you're feeling guilty about, that you know you need to say sorry about, well, just tell God you're sorry, and He loves to forgive. Well, thank you for listening to today's lesson. God bless you, and see you next time.